I'm back. It's not an encore. It's a finishing what I started. So, very specific dream last time to skip all the baggage at the back, not bother to go through chapter 70. I followed it, and insanely clearly, I might add. There was another part of the dream, though, that I hadn't quite figured out yet, so I didn't worry about it until it was important. And then all of a sudden it was. So here we are. In the dream, I'm wearing my dream catcher today. Dreams are pretty amazing, as are our human counterparts as we take the wisdom and amalgamate it into life, right? Okay, so in the dream, my guides and my higher self were shuffling some chapters around, and I was annoyed by that. Yes, they were. And I was like, I could see myself grabbing bits and pieces from here and there and putting it into what is technically supposed to be chapter 70. Now, what was pointed out to me this morning before I agreed to get on here, because, I need my confirmation as well. The chapter that I ended my book Mastering Your SOULworks on was a blog post that I had created way back. I had to go back and look. It was on September 25th, 2019. Now, I put that chapter at the end of my book, but technically it was supposed to be at the beginning, because I wrote that before I started compiling Mastering Your SOULworks. It was a placeholder, basically. It was a placeholder until I remembered. Now, when my guides started shuffling those chapters around on me in that dream, and in the last, 24 hours as I'm talking to them about it, they pointed out the one most important one in the back that I kind of hid in the background there as a journal entry that needed to be chapter 70. It's not. Who knows if I'll ever change that in my book. I don't think so, but never say never, right? We always have to be willing to evolve and shift and change as we're called to. Now, the argument in the back of my mind for the last while has also been, I don't need to spout this off. It's my own understanding and awareness, and it doesn't matter what my past or future lives represent, because I'm here to be more of a messenger than anything. That's true. But I also made a promise to tell my story, didn't I? And I can't do that unless I allow the pieces of my puzzle to come together. Just like in the last little while, I've allowed the pieces of my dreams, guidance, and clarity to come together, to come back for this final chapter. Okay. Oh, I have to find it first. Okay, here it is. It's called Revelations, as per the books of Lauren. And I wrote this on March 20th, 2024. This one is dedicated to all the women No. Women out there who have ever been silenced, lost their way, were made to feel small or insignificant, or who are struggling to still rise from the ashes. I see you. I believe in you. We've got this. I'm not even sure where to begin. But I do know it is time to reveal my full story from the past. I've always known for a very long time now that the last 11 years of my life, and then some, have provided a mirrored version of biblical events as they unfolded, replicating past life experiences, yet divinely orchestrated into present moment accounts in order to reveal critical aspects, newfound insights, as well as bring light to the shadows still lurking from within the depths of my soul. And not just any soul, either. More specifically, the SOULworks and truths stemming from the traditional Jesus narrative. And although uncovering my past has been a very hard, uncomfortable quest, that has perhaps not always been well received along the way, and by myself either, by the way. From my perspective and vantage point, those very same personal tribulations have also brought much clarity and closure to the authentic unfoldment of my past, while helping heal and release from the very experiences that caused them in the first place. Past and present timelines accounted for. Admittedly, I have struggled through my personal transformation to separate and distinguish between my obscure yet very intertwined past and present lives. Not always sure where the stories separate. With the timelines often blurring between what has already come to pass and what is yet to come, thereby also creating new opportunities for outcomes and reality alternatives well beyond any old story or repeating cycle forged within biblical text, yet lingering between the lines of our collective historical conditioning of a very outdated story. I do know I'm getting much closer to overcoming all displaced identities within my own biblical closet and officially crossing that finish line once and for all. However, it occurred to me more recently that I will never completely transcend the age-old story until I place the finishing touches on the unique puzzle that is my own SOULworks, while revealing my personal truths from the past as I know them to be, many of which I've alluded to within all of my 3 books, yet never quite fully revealed. And not so much because I'm hiding that awareness, more so because the truths had yet to completely surface. And simply because I wasn't quite ready for many of those aspects buried within my soul to officially arrive until much more recently. Divine timing and all. As with anything I have ever written and revealed within this lifetime, rest assured, you need not believe or follow me down this rabbit hole of my very sacred yet public transformation. Because at this point, I'm not even speaking my truth in an effort to help heal or save the world from outdated doctrines and understandings. My work in that regard has already been accomplished through my published books. At this crossroads, I'm speaking my truth only for the purpose of bringing my own peace of mind, so that all ghost-written stories within my personal biblical entanglement can finally be set free. Here it goes. Ever since I was a child, I have cried internally and sometimes externally whenever I heard the biblical story of Mother Mary and baby Jesus lying in the manger. And not tears of joy, as one would expect or anticipate, as per the narrative and old cultural interpretations found within scriptures. I'm talking tears of grief, sorrow, and longing well beyond what any adolescent intellect raised within the Christian community could ever comprehend. At one point in my childhood, I even had what others may consider the privilege of playing the role of Mother Mary within a very traditional church Christmas pageant. Now, as part of the setting ensemble, photos were taken ahead of time with yours truly playing the role of a very pregnant Mother Mary, riding an actual donkey into town, while shortly thereafter holding this beautifully bundled baby in a manger. And although everyone involved in the pageant production bustled around in excitement and seemingly very well versed within the order of said biblical events captured in time, truthfully, I cried intermittently all day long, trying to understand a deep, unresolved sorrow rising from within. The only obvious truth to me and my 10-year-old self at the time was that I never wanted to play any role within the biblical narrative, nor could I pretend any longer that it was a joyful moment in our collective history, especially my own. So you see, my involvement and reactions to the biblical era are not some new, obscure awareness stemming from the rise in the New Age movement, nor could my reactions be likened to a personal pursuit of self-empowerment. I literally arrived on the scene at birth with a pre-existing juxtapose of reactions and inner dialogue, which has undisputably gained momentum my entire life. Forged specifically against a very inaccurate story told and still supported by the church, its followers, as well as the arbitrary accounts found within the New Testament. A testament that in reality is no more than a falsified, ghost-written story derived from a borrowed version to the authentic truth. Mine. Now, years ago, and certainly before my tribulations of biblical entanglement officially began to surface, I was told, very specifically by my guides, that I represented the authentic story of Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, and Jesus. Essentially, I came pre-packaged into this world as a 3-in-1 deal. And yet seemingly not because of a value pack of a Holy Trinity housed within, by the way. No, not even close. Now, upon hearing this absurdity of 3 lives compiled into one, I did what any sane person would do at the time and dismissed the outrageous accounts immediately without even a second thought beyond what type of an ego-driven, arrogant soul would ever self-identify as representing all 3 main characters from the biblical narrative. I mean, seriously, what the hell was wrong with me? Consequently, I successfully stashed that knowing further down into the depths of my soul, trying to dismiss the guidance heard altogether, and certainly years before the unfoldment of my SOULworks publicly began, more like a prequel to the trilogy of my written words, one might say. All but forgotten, and years after my day in the valley, a strange occurrence started to unfold while undergoing various energy healing techniques in my exasperated attempts to transcend the past. Basically, I started to realize that whenever healing work was directed towards my right arm, visions coupled with the agony felt by the traditional Jesus story held captive on the cross came flooding in. Interestingly, I also experienced this particular scene from 2 separate vantage points. One from the body, actually being tortured on the cross, and the other from the vantage point of the heavens, but more so like an out-of-body experience, yet still connected to the earthly suffering. Or perhaps even better described as a disconnected, fragmented soul untethered in time. I worked through that unparalleled pain for many years, aimed to heal from whatever part I may have played as a segue to the biblical story, yet not always clear where I officially stood. In fact, after all these years, I've always pondered how my soul could hold so much confusion on what sandals I wore, despite many clear visions of having been crucified. Adding to the confusion, and around the same time, I discovered that within my left arm was the opposing scenario. From this vantage point, I saw visions of being at the foot of the cross while grieving beyond belief as I clenched dearly to a limp body still warm but lifeless within my arms. A body that would continuously morph between a grown man and an infant child. Let me say that again. visions of a crucified body that would morph between a grown man and an infant child. A child not only depicted as a symbolic lamb, by the way, but more so as the appalling reality alternative of an actual slain one. Of course, my mind always filled in the blanks, assuming it was my own confusion mounting as to which Mary I felt more connected to. Mother Mary, grieving the loss of her grown child, or Mary Magdalene, grieving the loss of what appeared to be morphing versions between her husband and connections to her unborn child. And since there's so many damn Marys within biblical text, each depicted in far vastly different ways, let me identify the two key players within the biblical saga for you, otherwise known as the two women of the apocalypse. In one corner, we have the loving Virgin Mother having birthed the Savior, or at least that is how the story's been told. And in the far, very far opposing corner, we have also the loving Mother, yes, but we have a very much tarnished woman by the biblical era. Prostitute type figure of a barren woman whose slain child was never born, although still fighting against the age-old stories of the church narrative, by the way. In case you've yet to understand the two versions that surface within my own energy field and cellular memories embodied within, here's the same narrative depicted from a different vantage point. The two women of the apocalypse are one and the same, yet depicted as two separate people within the biblical story, depending on who you're listening to. One a forgery, otherwise known as Mother Mary, or as the story was traditionally told, versus Mary Magdalene, the authentic mother, whose story has yet to be heard. Till today. Now I'm sure by now you are muttering to yourself, this is not new information, Lauren. The world has been alluding to the authentic story of Mary Magdalene, Yeshua, and their family for quite some time now. And certainly I do and have always concurred. However, as it turns out, the well runs very deep within the depths of my SOULworks if one dares to delve into the layers of the historical lineage held within. Now, over the course of the past 7+ years, I've done just that. Delved into the depths of my soul with far more inner work completed than you could even fathom. Still trying to break free, yet still tethered to the old narrative. And not by choice, as many have alluded to over the years, but more shockingly, because elements of those same scriptures were written for, about, and even against me all along. In fact, I've said many times over, I represent both the Mary and Jesus story. I've also said many times over that I physically embody both spirits held within. I've proposed on many occasions my story was altered. What I never knew, and perhaps couldn't bear witness to remember until more recently, was that my spirit held the key to the sealed vault deep inside my own soul works that protected the ultimate secret still housed within. The more healing work I did, the more drastic and shocking the visions became. Until one day, when I removed all ghost-written stories of the biblical narrative, removed my own expectations of what it all meant, and silenced my own mind, if only just for a moment, my soul officially broke free. It was in that moment of higher truth that my authentic story came bursting through like a well of sorrows and a suffering woman in travail. A pregnant woman, in fact, hung on a cross for the abomination of having claimed to be birthing a Messiah, while subsequently losing her child in the process. A child who was never laid to rest in a manger, by the way, but was laid to rest in a tomb. And not having understood the entire process completely at the time, even herself, that same grieving mother who in the throes of such trauma insisted she heard and saw the risen Messiah yet again, and as she had already been doing for the entire duration of her pregnancy and soul works, by connecting to a powerful yet disconnected, fragmented aspect of her own soul all along, which also happens to be how it looks and feels to witness an untimely, unsanctioned, and not even close to divinely orchestrated death, by the way. That same woman from the past, and for argument's sake, let's just call her Mother Mary of Magdala, having first had visions similar to my current yet paralleled life unfoldment. You remember, connected to prophecies, here to deliver a message of change, bringing new understandings to transcend biblical texts, even having first taught and spoken about these events for years within the local community. A woman independently claiming her role in changing the Old Testament narrative. And yet the audacity of that same harlot, who couldn't have possibly filled those shoes, said the locals, and adamantly, even herself for a time, simply because, well, that was admittedly even herself, but adamantly and admittedly, I would say, even herself for a time, simply because this same woman, by this very specific point in her life, was already married to one said Joseph of Arimathea, and already had 2 children, all absolutely amazing souls, by the way. So despite her own convictions, she was certainly not even close to fulfilling the essential prerequisites required of a pure soul capable of delivering such a sacred mission. Only as per original interpretations and biblical text, of course. Now here's where the plot twist begins to veer from the past storyline to the present one, with elapsed remembering helping to create an alternative reality to those very same ancestral patterns a second time around. Mother Mary of Magdala, being pregnant with her third child, having felt I was to birth one, yet delivered the enlightened version of my soul works instead. Both ostracized within the community for the abomination of claiming such a role, and yet adamant they were living out prophecy while bringing closure I hope it's closure. It's both bringing new teachings to the world. One having lost her child while pregnant on the cross, leaving her in absolute desolations. Later escaping with her family to live their lives beyond the Old Testament and what could be salvaged of their broken hearts. The other just birthed the entirety of her soul works, yet rejected by the community, leaving herself and her sanctuary in absolute desolations, yet still craving to escape with her family to live their lives beyond the entire compilation of the biblical era and what could be salvaged of their broken hearts. Both at a crossroads. Both women being the messenger, even if it took them years upon lifetimes to stop displacing that responsibility on anyone beyond themselves, simply out of the ingrained context of old scriptures and the collective expectations about this time. Both who believed the role was better suited to a man or a child or even another woman for that matter, while society often concurred. One whose story from the past was forever altered and forged into a falsified story originally depicting her child having died for her sins, later and ironically becoming incorporated into church doctrines, and further distorted into having been a grown man dying for the sins of all others. Although the gap between infancy and manhood still remaining unaccounted for, even in biblical scriptures, by the way. And although shocking, past and present timelines accounted for, the blessing is that her story can never be changed or altered or forged ever again. Because no matter what happens from this moment forward, or how long it takes the world to recognize the higher truth rising from the ashes of her biblical entanglement, thankfully, the authentic story was and has always been forever written in the stars, set into motion through the divine timing of all things, while safely embedded into the archives of her very unique, authentic soul works, just waiting to be found. A jumble of confusion, I know. And perhaps quite the historical legacy to be written out of my own story, for sure. But most assuredly, the authentic truth, hiding behind the shadows of all misconceptions and expectations regarding this era of time. Truth. And if you think that what I am suggesting is the ultimate abomination of all things holy, you best think again and very carefully consider the more significant historical impact of a slain yet worshipped figure of a distorted truth, depicted as a required sacrifice for the sins of all others, while still professed to symbolize the ultimate message of a loving God. Now that is the ultimate abomination of all things holy. And despite the reactions that may arise from this post, now or for even years to come, it is most certainly well beyond time for society to move past the old misconceptions of this biblical narrative, while individually and globally taking responsibility for our genuine divine essence held within. We are all here at this time, learning to embody the potential of our own unique soul works with as much grace, unconditional love, and authentic forgiveness as we can individually and collectively muster. Me too. And if that particular transcendence happens to require the complete eradication and ending of the entire biblical era to finally arrive at our collective destination of enlightenment, then so be it. That old narrative has officially run its course well beyond its perceived falsified authority, and regardless of how long it takes the entire world to fully process and come to terms with the magnitude of our epic biblical ending to new beginnings. And so it ends, and so it officially begins. Upon arrival of our predestined crossroads, I further extend my teachings and guidance through the archives of my already published books, blog, and original podcast series. It's short but sweet. The podcast. The book's a little longer, of course. I further extend them as an open invitation to our collective new beginnings. If ever you find yourself seeking higher truth or divine closure from the biblical era, I encourage you to open the pages to my authentic soul works. That is where you'll find me. And perhaps in doing so, you will also fully awaken to your own soul potential and officially set yourself free. Until then, and for anyone who asks in the interim, just tell them I am home. Truth. Thank you for seeing me, for hearing me. I will do you the honor and see, hear, and believe in you too.